So today's video is going to be on the topic of trauma bonding, and I did take notes on this video, but I feel like I want to more so freestyle it. Not necessarily freestyle, but I guess I just want to go based off of like personal experience and like any messages that are just coming through to me. I just want to just speak as opposed to just like hitting you with a bunch of facts, because it's one thing to go online and read the definition of trauma bonding and the steps to get over it, but it's a whole nother thing when you can explain it from your point of view or explain it from a stance of, having been through it yourself. So pretty much what a trauma bond is, it's like this very intense emotional connection to someone that is harming you, yet you feel like you cannot walk away from. Like you feel like you cannot disconnect. And you'll know that you're in a trauma bond. Like I feel like you don't even have to go and look up the symptoms of it. You will just know that you are in one, because it's like you feel like you are in prison. Like you feel like this person has you imprisoned. They really don't. You can get up and walk away at any time that you choose to, but you just feel like you can't. Like it's just very strong magnetic pull and connection to someone. And usually these type of bonds are formed when there is inconsistency with the love that is being given to you. So it could start out with, a person being emotionally unavailable towards you and you kind of pursuing them and they're not being interested. And then all of a sudden they start being interested and they start like showering you with love. And then all of a sudden they start taking that love away again and they become emotionally distant and unavailable again. And this is how narcissists operate. People with narcissistic personality disorder, they will love bomb you very heavily and they will create like this love high within your mind, like this feeling of euphoria, and then suddenly they will snatch it away from you. And it's almost like they keep you hanging on to them because you are trying to go back to that feeling of euphoria that they gave you in the beginning stages. And basically that's how a trauma bond is formed. It's like two extremes. They will shower you with so much love, affection, and adoration, and then all of a sudden they will just be cold towards you. And when you have those two extremes happening within your mind, like within the chemical process in your brain, it causes addiction. And it causes you to have a trauma bond. A trauma bond is very similar to an addiction. I read an article that was comparing it to an addiction to cocaine or heroin. So yeah, you can become addicted to a person on that level, to the point where you feel like you are having physical and chemical withdrawal symptoms. So like I said, this is something that can happen with narcissists. Like they can cause a trauma bond with them by doing this, but this could happen with anyone, honestly. It doesn't have to be a narcissistic person that you form a trauma bond with. It could just be a person who is hot and cold with you, or who sometimes shower you with love and sometimes is, standoffish. This could be a person who has fearful avoidant attachment style, which I have a video on that I will link. People with fearful avoidant attachment style, it's in their nature to be kind of hot and cold, and it's not because they're trying to necessarily abuse you or to cause a trauma bond between you like a narcissist would. It's because they are also fearful of love, so they can be hot and cold because of that. So like I said, I think you'll know, like whenever you're hearing me talk about this, I feel like you'll instinctively know that you're in a trauma bond. But just in case you are kind of confused, I guess I can run down a few of the like signs of it. So some signs of being in a trauma bond, just off the top of my head and just off of my own experience, is that you can argue with the person all the time, but it seems like there is no resolution. Like you argue and then no one really wins in the end and nothing gets resolved. So it's just like these explosive, intense arguments. You project a lot of positive traits onto that person that they do not have. So you can kind of zoom in on things that you want them to have. Like if someone is talking to you about them and it's like someone from the outside looking in, so they can clearly see the person for who they are and you can't see because you have a trauma bond with them. They could say like, oh, why do you deal with this person? Like that person is really selfish. And then you'll kind of defend them like, no, actually this person is very giving because they gave me this one time. Like you will kind of zoom in on the little things they do for you, and you will project these positive qualities onto them that other people can clearly see aren't there. Like other people can clearly see this person is not compassionate, this person is not giving, this person is not loving, but it's like you're grasping for straws, like you're grasping for any little sign that they are those things, because you are having cognitive dissonance in your mind. And what cognitive dissonance is basically when you have two opposing beliefs in your mind, and your mind is very uncomfortable with that, so your mind will try to basically explain one of the beliefs away. So for example, if you believe that this person is loving, caring, and that's why you're staying with them. Like, that's what your mind wants you to believe, because your mind doesn't want to accept the fact that you are in a trauma bond. So you're trying to convince your mind that this person is loving and caring, and that's why you're with them. Someone comes along and points out that this person is not loving and caring, so now you have two conflicting thoughts in your mind. So now your mind has to try to balance things out by finding things about that person that is loving and caring, so that then your mind can feel at ease again. See what I'm saying? I hope that makes sense. So another sign that you are in a trauma bond with someone is if they have no signs, like they're showing no signs of change or growth, but you are still holding on to hope. And you could be holding on to hope just because you are hoping that they will change, or you could be holding on to hope because they are promising you that they will, but they really aren't. Usually that's someone who is purposely keeping you trapped in a trauma bond. They're like promising, like, no, I'm going to be better, I'm going to do better, and they know they're not going to do better. And that's why I mean when I say sometimes you have a trauma bond with abusers who are really trying to keep you stuck there, but sometimes you have trauma bonds with people who aren't necessarily trying to keep you stuck. They just have their own issues and you have yours. So sometimes, yes, someone will promise you they're going to change, but you show no sign, like they show no signs of changing, but you just still hold on to hope because that bond is so strong. Or if they're not promising you it, you just still in your mind are just praying and wishing that they will see the error in their ways and that they will change. And I think that one of the biggest signs that you have a trauma bond with someone is just the way that you feel. If you feel like you are imprisoned, like you cannot walk away at all, like no matter how hard you try, you just can't, or whenever you do walk away, you just feel like you're dying without this person pretty much, then that's just a clear indication that you have a trauma bond with someone. When it comes to a breakup where the relationship was healthy, we do feel that sense of separation and it does hurt. But with a trauma bond, it's just so much more extreme that you literally feel like you will fall over and die without this person. Like you feel like you cannot live without them and that life is not worth living without them. A lot of people who are in trauma bonds that separate from their partner, they will end up committing suicide. That happens more often than people understand. And that's why I said I kind of want to freestyle this video, because like I said, it's one thing to read about these things from a textbook, but it's another thing to look at it from like a perspective of like, this is serious business, because there are people who lose their lives over things like this, and there are people who go insane over things like this, like not even just lose their lives, but sometimes lose their minds because they feel like they are not, like they cannot live without this person that they are traumatically bonded to. So how is a trauma bond formed? There's something called intermittent reinforcement. I hope that I'm saying that right. I will put it across the screen. Something called intermittent reinforcement, where pretty much whenever you are given, and I mentioned this earlier in the video, whenever you are given an extreme amount of love and affection, it sets off chemicals in your brain that puts you on like a very high, and then when you have that taken away from you, then you pretty much crash, and then your whole life becomes dedicated to finding that high again, and usually only the person who put you on that high can recreate that feeling. Every other relationship, friendship in your life just seems so dull and lackluster because you are chasing that high that they once gave you, and it's like you feel as though they can only give you that high. So I mentioned in one of my other videos, I'm not sure which one, about this experiment with rats, and pretty much what they did with this experiment is that they put this container of food like on the rat cage, and the rat would have to push a button in order for the food to come out. And basically what they did is that they had the rat push the button, and sometimes the food would come out, but then sometimes nothing would come out. And basically they did this experiment to demonstrate intermittent reinforcement and how it works, and how you can become addicted when sometimes you get what you want, or sometimes you get your needs met and sometimes you don't. So pretty much the rat, after a while of pressing the button and the food being inconsistent, like it coming out sometimes and it not coming out other times, the rat became obsessed with pushing the button. And soon afterwards, the scientists actually stopped giving the rat food altogether, so the rat was pushing the button and nothing was coming out. And you would think after a while the rat would just kind of walk away and understand, like, okay, there's no more food coming out, it's over. But no, that's not what happened. When they took the food completely away, the rat actually became even more obsessed and was pressing the lever even more, to the point where it neglected itself and neglected its grooming, like it stopped grooming. I believe they said they put like a mate in the cage with the rat, and the rat just neglected the mate. The rat was too concentrated on pushing that button, wanting that food to come out. So that's a pretty clear description or a clear illustration of how trauma bonding works and intermittent reinforcement works. It's like this person gave you a little bit of food, and sometimes they gave you the food, sometimes they didn't. Like, that's the equivalent to you pushing the button, and then when suddenly they take that food all the way away, that's when you become extremely hooked and obsessed with them. See what I'm saying? Kind of like how the rat did. And a lot of people in trauma bonds, just like the rat, they will neglect everything else around them. They will neglect their job, they'll neglect their health, they'll neglect every other thing in their life because they are just fixated on getting that love from that person again, getting that food from that person. How do you break a trauma bond? This is a process that is, I would say, simple but not easy. Like, there are very simple steps to break a trauma bond, but it's not something that's easy to do because, like I said, in an article that I was reading, they actually compared it to being addicted to heroin or cocaine. So you are addicted to this person when you have a trauma bond, and I know this firsthand because I am still trying to break a trauma bond that I've had since 2016. Like, I'm still trying to break it. And that's not to scare anybody and tell you that, oh, it's going to take you 2 years to break this trauma bond. No, I didn't really know that much about trauma bonds back then, so I didn't know how to actively break one. So that's why I feel like it's taking me as long as it has to break the trauma bond. But one of the main things that you need to do first off is no contact. Because every time you are in contact with that person, it feeds the trauma bond. So that means no talking on the phone, no texting, no checking their social media, because that is a form of contact by checking their social media. You cannot see them, you cannot hear from them, you cannot hear about them, you cannot talk about them unless you're talking about your pain or your trauma. You see, like, if you're in therapy or you're talking to a friend about what happened, then yes, you can talk about them. But reminiscing about them, reminiscing about your good times or their good qualities and just like nonstop thinking and talking about them, that is considered contact. You can't do that. So no contact is going to be like the main thing that's going to allow you to detach from this person. But the thing is that when it comes to no contact, you will feel this withdrawal, like kind of like you're withdrawing from a drug. You will feel anxious. You will feel empty. And what a lot of people don't understand is that you are more prone to trauma bonds when you have been abused in childhood, because when we have been through a certain level of emotional abuse in childhood, we tend to find ways to numb our pain, even if we don't realize that we're doing it. And eventually, a lot of us just end up feeling extremely empty. Like, emptiness is our default setting. We just feel empty all the time. And people don't understand why they feel empty. And a lot of the time, it's because you have been through so much pain in childhood that you have been almost trained to numb yourself. See what I'm saying? You're almost trained to feel empty, to not want to feel anything. But naturally, as humans, we want love and we want to feel something. So when we have a trauma bond with someone, they are giving us a feeling. They are giving us an intense feeling. On some level, a trauma bond is beneficial to us because it helps us to feel, quote unquote. So our brains, because our brain sees it as beneficial, it doesn't want to get away from this person, because once you're away from this person, once you're no contact, you feel empty and your mind does not want you to feel like that. So one of the keys to breaking a trauma bond is to free yourself of that emptiness, or to attack that feeling of emptiness. Because if you attack that feeling of emptiness and try to work out why you feel that way and try to change that, then you will less likely feel the need to go back for that intensity. You see what I'm saying? A trauma bond with someone is more so like a mask or like a cover up of something deeper that's inside of us that we need to heal from. And so a lot of people, the mistake that they'll make when they're trying to break a trauma bond is that they will be like, okay, my goal is to not check their social media for a month. And it's like, that doesn't work, because there's still an underlying issue there. So even if you break that trauma bond with them, eventually someone else will come along and give you that intensity and you will be in another trauma bond. So the key to really breaking a trauma bond is not to put your focus and attention on, okay, my goal is to break this, is to get over this person. Your goal should really be more so to change your life in a way that is fulfilling to you, so that you won't need that emotional intensity from that person or from anyone else for that matter. So a lot of this, like I said, stems from childhood, not being nurtured properly. And a lot of us had parents who we formed our first trauma bonds with. Actually, a majority of people who are in trauma bonds in adulthood, they have formed a trauma bond with their own parents. Unfortunately, their parent was probably extremely inconsistent with their nurturing. Sometimes they loved them, sometimes they nurtured them, other times they didn't. Sometimes they were verbally abusive, sometimes they were loving. Like, you form your first trauma bond with your abusive parent, and then it just gets worse from there as you get into relationships. So healing your childhood wounds and really like going back in time and really analyzing what type of relationship you have with your parents, the type of bond that you have with your parents, and understanding how to heal that is what's going to help you heal the trauma bond that you are currently in, and also to keep you away from trauma bonds in the future. So, like I said before, no contact. Don't contact them at all. Don't check their social media or anything. Try to fill up your time with things that are distracting to you mentally. So things that are tedious. Like whenever I need to fill up my time with something, when my mind is racing, I'll sit down and put on individual lashes, like individual false lashes, because it takes so much time and it's so tedious, and it's something you have to focus on, and it's something that you're using your hands with. I've come to find that using your hands is extremely beneficial when you're trying to break a trauma bond, because if you're doing some type of mental work, like mental distraction, it doesn't really work because your mind would just keep drifting to that person. So you need a physical distraction, like something you are actually sitting and doing with your hands. Another thing that's important is support system. You need all the support that you can get, because you will feel like you are dying. You will feel extremely alone. You will feel very empty, and it is important for you not to isolate yourself, because that just heightens the feelings. If you have someone around you that is very loving and is very understanding and compassionate, then keep that person around you. Explain to them what's happening in your life, and try to be around them as much as possible. For me, that person is my sister. Like, she completely understands when I'm in a situation where I have a trauma bond with someone. She knows she's the first person I'm going to run to. Don't feel like you are overwhelming people, because when you are in a trauma bond, that person has pretty much convinced you through this bond that you are not worthy of love, you're not worthy of support. So that spills over into after the relationship ends. You feel like you don't want to reach out to anyone because you feel like you are a burden, like you're a problem. And that's just not true. There are a lot of people who are willing to help you. Don't think that, oh, I just don't want to dump my feelings onto them. I just don't want to. I understand that. But when you're in a trauma bond and you have someone who genuinely, seriously cares about you, they are going to want to help you through it, period, point blank. And that spills over into spirituality. Because if you don't have anybody who you feel as though is willing to help you through this bond, or who doesn't want to deal with your issues, quote unquote, then you could always turn to spirituality, or like a higher power, a higher calling. You know what I'm saying? Whenever I am deep in the pits of a trauma bond and it just feels excruciating, God definitely does uplift me and help me to feel like I am deserving and that I am worthy, and it helps me to separate myself from that person more and more. Like, I can't tell you what to believe in religiously, like, or what to believe in spiritually, but I'm just saying from personal experience, having a higher power or believing in a higher power is something that has uplifted me to the point where I feel like I'm able to break trauma bonds more easily. Not saying that it's easy for me just because I believe in God, but it definitely does get me through like the tough times, or like the tough days, and having faith that this will pass, like that this isn't something that's going to be forever. Because when you're in a trauma bond, I know firsthand that it is very shameful. You feel ashamed that you are so addicted and attached to a person that I don't even know how to describe the feeling. You just feel ashamed of yourself. And like I said in one of my other videos as well, when you are feeling shame is a very low vibrational frequency, and God is on the vibrational frequency of love. So when we are experiencing that intense shame, we feel very disconnected from ourselves, first of all, because our essence is love, so we don't feel like ourselves, and that's why we feel so terrible. And we're also disconnected from God, because when you're disconnected from yourself and from love, you're disconnected from God. And that's when you really have to seek God, seek out a higher power, seek out the higher vibration of the lesson, like the higher octave of the lesson. Like, for example, the trauma bond that I was in since 2016, or probably like the beginning of 2017, is just now starting to fall apart. Like, it's just now starting to break. I can feel myself and my energy separating from his. And I feel like that's only because I have discovered that I don't need to be replenished by him when it comes to love or love energy, that I can get that directly from source. And I have a video about parasitic relationships and the disconnect from source that you can watch. It'll explain more about that. But I feel like the bond started to break more when I started to be more connected with God. Like I said, get my love energy directly from source instead of getting it from him or feeling like I needed it from him. And also when I started to connect with God or connect with spirituality, I discovered my purpose in life. So now I don't feel as empty as I used to. So now I don't feel like I need that intensity from him, because I feel less empty. So when you connect with God, or you connect with a higher power or a higher purpose, then it will be easier to leave a trauma bond. It'll be easier to break a trauma bond. Now there's this one video, I think it's a channel called Improvement Pill, where they have a video about addiction. I definitely recommend that video to everyone who's in a trauma bond. Just basically you treat the person or the bond like the addiction, and you follow each step that's in that video. I'm not going to explain too much about the video because you can just go and watch it instead of me just like retelling it, and I'll link it down below. But basically in the video they are talking about how you have to pretty much rearrange your whole life in order to get out of an addiction, and it's the same thing with a trauma bond. You can't wake up in the same environment doing the same things and expect for this bond to be broken. It takes work in order for this bond to break. So if you every single day are in a routine and you've been in that routine since you formed this trauma bond, you have to completely switch up that routine. When I first formed this trauma bond with this person, I was just not in a good headspace. I was living in a household that was very obnoxious and toxic. I was not working for myself. I was working, I forget where I was working at. I think I was working retail. And I'm not saying that you have to go out and quit your job and all this. I'm just giving you like an example. I was working in a place, like I said, that I did not enjoy working in. It's like my life was kind of like not that great, and I was very isolated. Like I didn't really talk to people, I didn't really socialize. Like my life just wasn't that great, and then I formed this trauma bond with this person. So now that I'm breaking the trauma bond, I've noticed that it's a large part due to the fact that my schedule has changed, and like the way that I live my life now, like my lifestyle has pretty much changed. Like now I'm a full-time YouTuber. Now I socialize with people more that I meet online who have similar interests as me and who have been going through the same things that I have been going through. I'm less isolated, and I speak up more, and I ask for my needs to be met. I don't feel like a burden anymore to people. Like whenever I need attention or I need like help, I now will go and seek it from other people that I can trust, and I don't feel like a burden anymore. And so my life is drastically different from how it was when I first formed that trauma bond. And that's pretty much the gist of the video that I'm going to link down below about how to break an addiction. Is that you have to just change, like you have to do a complete 180. Sometimes having to break a trauma bond can be a blessing in disguise, because there could be something that you have a higher calling towards, like you have a purpose towards, and you aren't stepping into it, or you weren't stepping into it. So now through breaking this trauma bond, you're being called to step into your purpose. See what I'm saying? So if there's any passion that you have been fearful of pursuing, now is the perfect opportunity to do it, because you only have two options now: either pursue your passion and prosper, or stay where you are and stay stuck to this very toxic situation. You see what I'm saying? So it's like now you have an ultimatum and you have a push to actually make your life better, so you can see a trauma bond as something positive in that light. So I think that that's it. I don't think I have anything else I need to share, except if you are in a trauma bond right now, just please be gentle with yourself, be patient with yourself. Do not beat yourself up over it. Try not to feel too ashamed, because this is something that a lot of people are going through, not just you. It's easy to feel like you are alone in this, and it's easy to feel that shame of being addicted to a person who is just not good for you. Just remember that if you are in a trauma bond, it's most likely because you had a trauma bond with your parents growing up. It was not in your control. It's not your fault. And now you have the power to take back your power and to evolve and change. And you don't have to be defined by the fact that you had this trauma bond or the fact that you have a trauma bond with your parents. You can overcome this, and you can break this bond and live a happy and fulfilling life after this. Just make sure to understand that this is a chapter in your life that's going to take work to get out of, but you are worth the work, sorry. And make sure that, like I said, you are just being very gentle and compassionate with yourself. So I think that's all I wanted to say. Yes, that's all I wanted to say. So thank you guys so much for watching. If you have not subscribed to my channel, do not forget to hit that subscribe button. Do not forget to hit that little notification bell. I feel like I haven't said that in so long, like in so many videos. So yeah, make sure that you are subscribed. And I am about to film my soulmate twin flame energy reading that I do weekly, so if you watch those, then be on the lookout for that. It should be up within a couple hours after this video, or I'll try to probably upload them all at once. So again, thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you guys in the next one. Bye.